Okay, Chair Pashota, whenever you're ready.
Yes, I'm just looking. Committeeman Davis is joining us. And I think we have trying to make sure we have a quorum. Liz Ward is just coming in.
I just logged in.
All right, I think we do have a quorum, so I'm going to get started. Good evening, everyone. This meeting is being held by way of Zoom remote video conference pursuant to Section 5, Public Law 1975. This is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of the meetings for 2025 in the News Record of South Orange and Maplewood and the Star Ledger in December of 2024, and by filing of said notice in the Office of the Municipal Clerk. Notification with access information for the meeting via phone conference and Zoom was made public by publication in the News Record and on the township's website. Ms. Lewis, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Adams.
Here.
Mr. Daffis.
Present.
Ms. Latham.
Here.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Mr. Fryatt.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Ms. Steig.
Here.
Ms. Ward.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan.
Present.
And Chair Pashota.
Here. Whereas Section 7 provides that the planning board has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation in the public at any meeting. Whereas it is the desire of this planning board to comply with the provisions of this act and at the same time to conduct business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the planning board of the Township of Maplewood that it does prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the planning board at all of its regular meetings. Can I please have a motion to accept the operating procedures?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you.
Second.
Mayor Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Ms. Latham.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
What is this?
The operating.
Procedures.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know if it was minutes. I wasn't here last month.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Fryatt.
Yes.
Ms. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Steig.
Yes.
Ms. Ward.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
And Chair Pashota.
Yes. Given that we just accepted our operating procedures, it seems like an appropriate time to talk about changing our operating procedures in the future. We have been conducting business via video conference as was necessary due to the COVID pandemic. I think the time has come for us to look to go back to in-person meetings. I personally believe that the members of the planning board ourselves engage in each other in fully and better discussion when we are in the room together, when we have when we're able to work with each other and, as I said, have a more full discussion in person than via video conference. And I would like to see us move towards doing that. That's exactly how we conducted business before the pandemic. I think that, you know, if there was an opportunity, if we had the resources to perhaps conduct our business in a hybrid fashion, that that might be a possibility further down the road. But right now, given the resources that are available to us, we can transition from conducting business via video conference back to in person. But I don't want to make this decision unilaterally. And so I've talked to several members of the board. I just want to, for the record, have an informal poll on whether people, members of the planning board specifically.
It basically article says that
Can you please
that's the essence of it, and the internal teams are struggling.
Mr. Benedict, go on mute, please.
There we go. So I wanted to just briefly have the members of the planning board share their own thoughts on it. Again, I firmly believe that we as a board engage more thoroughly in person. I also think that we have better engagement with applicants when we are in person. I realize that this potentially makes it difficult for members of the public to engage with us, but I am hopeful that we can explore opportunities to either live stream meetings or record meetings and provide the video to the public via the township website. So I invite members of the planning board to share your thoughts on this so that we can have kind of an informal poll on whether or not this is the direction that we should proceed.
So I'm happy to go first. Never shy to speak up this one. So, listen, I think that in person is always better. It's for the reasons that you indicated in terms of better deliberations among members of the board and with applicants, that the township committee decided to go back in person. I do think the ideal setup is hybrid, which is what we were able to achieve as a township committee, because I do think that increases community engagement. We certainly have experienced that as a township committee. And I just want to inform the entire board that I've had communications with administration, and we're exploring how we can make that possible for the planning board. The technology is available. We've been using it. We've tested it. Making no promises, at least early on in January, but we're looking into how we can make that work.
But if aside from whether or not hybrid is possible, given the options that we have before us at this moment in time of entirely virtual or entirely in person, I am an advocate for in person.
Agreed.
I also am in agreement with that position.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm also go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ms. Teig.
I'm also in agreement. I've been on several nonprofit boards, several regular boards, business for 30 years. It's just more effective to do this kind of work in person, to be able to engage with the planners, developers, presentations. That hybrid would be lovely, but remote is not as effective, in my personal opinion.
Thank you.
I just want to chime in to say I agree with everyone. I think it's past time for us to get in a room together and do this work. It's very important for the community, and we should be as effective as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
Yep, I agree too. And I miss you all.
Thank you, Ms. Ward.
I also concur.
Thank you, Mr. Fryatt. Well, it sounds like most of us are in agreement. I think an appropriate time to go back to in person would perhaps be with the February meeting, because we've already given notice of when our January meeting will be. That was part of giving notice of when all our meetings for 2025 are, and then it includes January of 2026. So I am hoping that with when we disclose our meeting dates for 2026, including January of 2027, that we will announce that we are going back to an in-person format. So thank you all for your time on that. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. The members of the planning board were given the minutes from our last meeting electronically. That was delivered electronically to each of you. Does anyone have any edits or revisions of the minutes from that meeting? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Committeeman Daffis,
Yes.
Ms. Latham,
Yes.
Ms. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
and Chair Pashota.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So without further ado, we will move to the next item on our agenda, an informal presentation of the historic preservation element of the master plan. On my Hollywood squares, I'm not sure I see Mr. Wright, the chair of the Historic
he's-
Preservation
Yep,
Committee.
I'm here.
There you are. Ah, it says I was looking for your name.
Sorry, it's
So, so I will turn it over to you. I understand you're going to say a few words and introduce it, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Ross, correct?
yes, correct.
All right, then please go ahead.
All right, so hi, my name is Daniel Wright. I'm the chair of the Maplewood Historic Preservation Commission. So the historic preservation element of the master plan that's active now was last updated in 2008. It was not updated as part of the main master plan that was done several years ago. So the HPC applied for and received a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office to cover the full cost of producing the new historic preservation element. So in January of this year, the Township Committee awarded a contract to Barton Ross and Partners to develop the element. A working group has been meeting monthly since February until I think about maybe it was the beginning of September, which that group included myself and some others from HPC. Liz Ward from the Planning Board, our Township Committee liaison, Mr. DeLuca, and members of the State Historic Preservation Office. So if there's support to move this forward, then this would be discussed with the Township Committee, I believe on November 17th. And then there would be a public hearing before you guys hopefully in your next meeting on December 9th. So that's some background. I'll hand it over to Mr. Ross.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Can you all hear me? Okay, terrific. So bear with me like 10 to 15 minutes. I'll quickly run through the draft and then happy to answer any questions. Hopefully Daniel can stay on as well to answer any questions. So let me try to share. Okay, can you all see?
Yes.
Good. Good.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so as Daniel was mentioning, this is the previous, or actually the current historic preservation element for Maplewood, which was produced in 2008. It's only 36 pages long. It has no images or maps associated with it. So it's kind of a bare bones report. In 2008, there were 7 locally landmark properties in Maplewood. And keep in mind, local designation is by the property, block, and lot. And sometimes people think it's just the historic house, but it is by block and lot, so it's the whole property. So these early efforts focused on the architectural surveys for the potential historic districts, prevention of out-of-scale replacement structures and additions, and public outreach and awareness for the importance of historic preservation throughout the municipality. And the recommendations at that time were very aspirational. So continue the local designation process for buildings, sites, districts, participate in the National Register of Historic Places, New Jersey Register of Historic Places programs, identify historic monuments, bridges, gates, trees in the historic feature lists, preserve neighborhood character through demolition delays and form-based zoning, and continue documenting Maplewood historic resources through more survey work. And, you know, we always want to raise public awareness and appreciation of historic preservation programs. The bulk of the element are the well-described descriptions for all the existing Maplewood structures that were built before 1860. And there were 46 at the time. This was done in 2008. They surveyed historic districts, including Memorial Park, Valley Street, Prospect Street, the Boynton Burnett area, and Ridgewood Road, other locally designated landmarks, and an inventory of the other elements as we just mentioned. So that's all included in the appendix, which we basically built upon. We didn't really delete anything unless things have been demolished. So we basically built upon this 2008 element with our new one. So our revised 2025 historic preservation element, it's a much more robust 191 pages, sorry. And we've identified over 1,600 eligible properties throughout the township. And these are all included in our Appendix C historic property inventory listings. We formulated new goals to implement Maplewood's vision and approach for historic preservation. Some of these critical recommendations and action items are preserving neighborhood character by minimizing the demolitions, protecting neighborhood character through new design guidelines and commission technical assistance, identification of historic resources. Over a 14-year period between 2004 and 18, the township assessed 1,246 historic properties in 9 survey areas. But how could these properties be physically protected by local designation? Expanding public participation in the historic preservation process, and investing in historic preservation programs. So township staff, continuing education for commission members, public outreach, etc. And this is kind of our executive summary and introduction, where we talk about the Secretary of the Interior standards, which is the federal standards that all state and local preservation commissions across the country follow. We also talk about 24 reasons historic preservation is good for your community from Don Ripkema. He's kind of the guru of economics and historic preservation. Chapter 3, we did a narrative history of Maplewood, and we also give a bio of the well-known architects who practiced in the township over the years, an example of typical architectural styles you'd see around town: colonial revival, Greek revival, up to the modern movement in the 20th century. And then in chapter 4, we discuss previously identified historic resources, including state and national register listed historic resources, state eligible historic properties, previously surveyed properties, Board of Education and township owned historic properties. There's the public parks and historic elements of interest. So again, these are non-buildings such as signs, fences, statues, monuments, historic markers, which are all still intrinsic to the character of historic Maplewood. We even have a list of signature or champion trees worthy of preservation. And we developed 6 maps to help illustrate the levels of identification throughout the township. And these are just some examples of the maps. On the left is the 12 locally designated historic landmarks. And on the right are parts of all 9 of the survey. So those are like areas that have been architecturally surveyed by the Historic Preservation Commission over the years. And then in chapter 5, we explained Maplewood's Historic Preservation Ordinance, the HPC itself, a list of these 12 individual properties. It explains what designation criteria the commission should use to nominate local historic landmarks, and defines words like significance and integrity that we use in historic preservation. And as you can see on the left, there's the list of the 12 individual landmarks which are locally designated in Maplewood. So the commission has jurisdiction over those 12 properties already. Chapter 6, we discuss all the federal, state, and county programs that have a relation to historic preservation and what funding or programmatic opportunities exist in New Jersey as it relates to historic preservation. And you can see there's a lot of different organizations, the Department of Environmental Protection, which actually controls the Historic Preservation Office. They're actually under the DEP, the New Jersey Sites Council, the Main Street programs. There's a lot of programs and a lot of different offices that you need to be aware of. And in chapter 7, we highlight the township's preservation successes, going back to 2001 when the commission was established. The ordinance was passed. The Maplewood Village Historic District was joined the State and National Register of Historic Places in 2022. The HPC is a certified local government. So for those of you that don't know, there's only 45, 46 certified local governments in all of New Jersey out of the 565 municipalities. So that's actually a very important, prestigious thing that Maplewood has. And by being a CLG, Maplewood has leveraged over 200,000 in funding over the years to do most of these planning reports, architectural surveys, design guidelines, all that type of stuff would fall under the purview of that funding, which is really great. This chapter also discusses challenges that implementing historic preservation policies, mainly neglect and deferred maintenance of older properties and recent tear downs, which we highlight here on the right, some of the most significant losses over the years. One of the important things for the planning board is probably chapter 8. This is a discussion of Maplewood's planning policies, including passages from the 2023 master plan that pertain to preservation, the 2006 tree protection ordinance, and the 2024 demolition review ordinance. So there's positive overlap that exists between historic preservation, green building, sustainability, accessory dwelling units, ADA barrier-free accessibility to buildings, including historic ones, and economic revitalization in terms of commercial redevelopments. So the current master plan clearly touts the successful adaptive reuse of historic structures. It also emphasizes the importance of protecting our historic resources from the pressures of new development and demolition. Arts, culture, branding, signage, and heritage tourism opportunities also overlap with preservation. And we provide a summary table for the recommendations, basically with responsible party, priority level, time frame, and cost for their ongoing implementation. That's kind of shown here. Then in chapter 9, which is very important, we go into all the historic preservation goals. So we established 7 goals for Maplewood's vision and approach to historic preservation. That's on page 91 on the right. The objectives and actions, they provide a framework for historic preservation, how it'll help shape the future of Maplewood. And then we go into a series of objectives, and there's 9 of them, and it's a little more broken down how these goals can actually be implemented and carried out. So objective 1 was identify and protect historic resources. So we give all these objectives measurable goals, such as establish local landmark protection for at least 10 significant buildings in the town, 1 historic district, and promote listings in the New Jersey and National Register of Historic Places. Objective 2, preserve neighborhood character, adopt local historic districts, prepare design guidelines for historic properties, and how do we provide tax abatements to property owners who wish to undertake fixing up their house, and how can we assist them in terms of funding moving forward. Objective number 3, assess historic assets. This could be identification of historic and archaeological resources in Maplewood. Objective 4, balance preservation, the rights of property owners. So alterations and additions are fine so long as they do not detract from the historic character of the building or the neighborhood or the streetscape or the view sheds from the streetscape. Objective 5, promote the rehabilitation of historic properties. So this is your realtors, the rehabilitation subcode, which is a fantastic thing in New Jersey to get out of doing things when you're a historic property. Basically exemptions that historic properties have, and then possibly handouts that could be available in the building department for members of the public. Objective 6, seek the benefits of sustainably associated with preservation. So this is your green building sustainability. Is there a linkage between preservation and sustainability? It should be stressed. It should be reinforced in township planning policies and how they get implemented. Number 7, foster public participation in the historic preservation process. So the HPC could sponsor workshops, local awards program, updating their website, and they do a really good job. Their website is probably one of the best ones for HPC in New Jersey already, but continue adding to that, and that kind of works into the public education aspect. Number 8, develop mutual interest partnerships. So this could be Duran Head House, Heritage Tourism, which was big on the master plan in 2023, and more land use board cooperation. Some towns and municipalities even have a retreat where they get the zoning board of adjustment, the planning board, the HPC, and the officials all together and kind of talk through their issues on a Saturday morning with bagels or something. And then we have Objective 9, invest in historic preservation programs, and this is seeking grant awards, township budget support, outside funding sources for increased staffing to help the HPC, National Register nominations, and your educational outreach. And then in section 10, this is the action plan. So there's not a lot of text, but we have these charts for achieving each of the 9 objectives, and it breaks them down by time frame and years and responsible parties. So you have HPC, planning board, township committee, who's responsible in order to accomplish those objectives. And then this was our advertisement for the historic preservation element of the master plan, trying to get people involved and to come out to kind of get their voice heard. And this was used for a couple things I'll mention in a second, but this is Appendix A, which is just the list of online resources. And this is Appendix B. So we want people to get out and participate in the public survey results. And we had fun with this section because we got to add in all the graphs and the charts and some of the best quotes provided by people who responded. There were 258 verified responses to the online survey that we put out. It was live for over a month in Maplewood. And we had over 25 people attend the in-person workshop, which was held on Saturday, June 28th, over at the Woodlands. And, we kind of, everything we learned, we put into the report. So that's Appendix B. And then Appendix C represents the exhaustive list of all the historic properties identified previously. And as part of this report and all the diligent efforts of the HPC members who helped compile all this, it's 52 pages long. It really explains the process also for referral to the Historic Preservation Commission. Every application for development submitted to either board for developments at the Planning or Zoning Board of Adjustment involving historic landmarks or properties located within historic districts identified in the township's historic preservation element of the master plan per the municipal land use law. So that's kind of this whole list. So even though all these 52 pages of 1,600 properties, they are not locally designated per se. They're not even on the state or national register either. But what they are is eligible historic resources that have been identified through this report and through the exhaustive efforts of the HPC members as being potentially historic. Therefore, when there's a development or land use board application, you're supposed to refer these to the HPC for their recommendations and advice on what the development would mean for the historic property and if there's any alternatives that could be undertaken. It doesn't mean you actually have to follow recommendations or advice, but it's very helpful in other towns. And I hope in Maplewood you can continue doing this. And the referral process, it always makes the project better, as I've learned over time. So that's kind of conclusion. I'll leave you with this. This is an article I wrote a few years back for the League of Municipalities magazine. And it was really just kind of explaining how historic preservation can really, increase the vitality and the quality of life in New Jersey towns. And that's a picture on the left of Montclair. And there's a lot of towns in Essex County that do a good job with historic preservation, but I'm hoping Maplewood can be right up there taking the lead with them as well. So with that, I'll answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ross. Are there any members of the planning board who have any questions for Mr. Ross? Any comments on the report?
I have a comment.
Please go ahead, Mr. Carlson.
I am very happy and very pleased to see the contents of sections 8, 9, and 10, which put forth an action plan. I think all too often with master plans, not necessarily historic preservation, but any content, it gets to be very general and gets to be telling a story rather than putting something forth proactively. And I think this list of objectives and the timeline and so forth, I'm quite pleased to see that. I'm impressed.
That's great. Yeah, I want to spend more time looking at the goals and objectives and keep them in mind, you know, as the planning board does its work going forward. Are there any other members of the planning board who want to share any thoughts or comments on this?
I have some.
Please go ahead, Mr. Pratt.
The recommendations call for 10 new designations within 3 years and entire new districts, also within the 3-year time frame. And the plan that you have in here shows that the extent of those districts to be, you know, almost a quarter of the town. So this to me just represents kind of radical expansion and acceleration of historic designations in town. And I just, you know, considering that since 2001, there's only been 12 properties designated, I guess I'm just sort of shocked at the ambition of this, and I don't see how the master plan supports it. Can you just talk a little bit about the expansion and acceleration of designation?
Sure. So honestly, historic districts are usually easier and more recommended to basically designate, since it's a defined area that has been studied before. Right now, there's 12 individual landmarks, which is great as well. But the HPC over the years has been doing these architectural surveys, and they've undertaken a lot of them over the years. And we are even able to go back to 1986 when the DEP did the original survey, and we were able to find it and scan it as part of this process and gave it to the HPC. And they've subsequently done, as you can tell, yeah, it's a good chunk of Maplewood, which has been architecturally surveyed for historic eligibility, which is a great thing. And that doesn't mean any of those are locally designated at the moment, but that's a lot of work that's been undertaken over the past 2 decades. And, you know, it'd be nice to incrementally start to, you know, locally designate and kind of protect some of those properties that may be in danger of tear downs or redevelopments, or, you know, whatever it may be. And, you know, it doesn't all have to happen overnight. I mean, that was our point. It should just happen incrementally. And oftentimes towns, you know, they pick 1 or 2 areas or districts that they just ill afford to lose. And, you know, that can kind of be the guinea pig, the process. And everyone can understand how it works. So yes, we're not advocating tomorrow you go out and designate, you know, 1,200, 1,600 properties, but it just kind of identifies all those, you know, properties and work over time that the HPC has been working on. And at some point, you know, instead of just surveying those properties in historic districts, you'd like to designate some and see how that goes. And you know, it usually works out pretty well. It increases property values, I can tell you that much. So,
Well, that's an optimistic take. I mean, I think, and certainly I take no issue with historic preservation, but I think it is worth recognizing that during the master plan process, there was a significant amount of opposition to the expansion of historic designations, particularly from people that owned historic homes presently that were designated, which was sort of alarming to me at the time. So the master plan went on to recommend that you know, this element should really seek to balance the concern of preservation with, you know, additional property owner burdens. And I don't see a lot of that in here, or more generally, the kind of concept of inspiring stewardship and building partnerships more than enforcing compliance. Can you just talk a little bit about the public partnership and how the plan balances the needs of homeowners?
Well, I think
Could I just interject? Could we stop sharing the screen so people can see those who are talking a little better?
There you go.
Thanks.
Well, as part of any local designation process, you never just submit something and now suddenly it goes to the TC and we start to try to designate things. So there usually is a neighborhood engagement process that's always best. And we stress that many times about, use the HPC as a resource. They've done a lot of work. They know these styles, they know the architecture, they know the history, and having public workshops and public get-togethers, maybe on a weekend, maybe on a Wednesday night or something, and get neighborhood people together who may be interested in designating, or maybe there's always going to be some people for and there's always going to be some people against, but the more outreach and education you can do, that always helps the process. And I would anticipate that being the first step before they would actually be going in front of the TC and trying to locally designate a historic district.
I just wanted to say I'm aware that there's one owner of a designated home who's always very vocal in opposition, but I could point you to another owner of a designated home where the advice they've received from the HBC saved them tens of thousands of dollars on one of the projects they had planned. So I don't know if there are others, but I'm aware of that one homeowner in specifically who has had negative things to say in these types of processes. And I did want to check too. I just want to check on the bullet about locally landmarking 10 buildings in 3 years. We've gone through some drafts, and I know that was a language at one point, but I believe now it's to locally landmark 10 buildings in years 1 to 10. So I want to make sure the planning board has the latest draft that we've been circulating, because it's not as aggressive as you mentioned, but I know it had been in a previous draft. So I'm looking at objective 1B, establish local landmark protection for at least 10 significant buildings in a time frame of 1 to 10 years. And there's pursuing one potential historic district over the next 3 years. That's 1F.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. I just read it that it calls for 10 new designations in 3 years, but I read in the objectives, yeah, it's different, but elsewhere in the document, it calls for 10 in the next 3 years. But timing aside, I think maybe the larger point here is about the process, right? So, how does designations, how does a designation process work? I know that's outlined in the township ordinance of 27183, which was also called out as vague by the master plan, that the criteria for eligibility and designation is vague, as well as the criteria for review of modifications to historic properties. So, and I just didn't see a lot about the ordinance. If there was some point about recommendation to make modifications to the ordinance, but not about how. So, like, how can the ordinance, which our master plan calls vague, be revised so that designation and approvals are more transparent and consistent, and that there's clear benchmarks for what warrants designation, beyond just kind of subjective measures of, just age or style. I know there's all kinds of criteria, but, how do you respond to the master plan calling out the designation and approvals as vague? How do we improve that?
Barton, you can jump in too, but I would push back because the criteria for designation that we use are based on the national standards for the national criteria for designation, which are very well established across the nation for all nationally designated properties. So I would push back on that language in the master plan about it being vague. But Barton might have more to add.
Yeah, I think our point was just that ordinances can always be revised and no two ordinances are the same. But at the same time, Daniel's right that Maplewood's a certified local government, meaning the state of New Jersey reviewed the ordinance and decided it was one of the best in the state of New Jersey, which is why you guys are the cream of the crop in terms of being one of only 46 municipalities out of the whole state that have that designation. So I think historic preservation is a little subjective. I mean, we try to make it as non-vague and professional as possible, but which district gets pushed forward, which area, I know there's a few that we talked about with the HPC, and Daniel could probably go into more detail on that. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's important to just go out into the neighborhoods and talk to people. And sometimes they'll all come out in support. Sometimes they'll come out with pitchforks, but that doesn't mean the area and the neighborhood where they live in isn't historically significant. And I think most of our planning efforts here have been focused on trying to identify all the really wonderful historic properties that are in Maplewood. And again, there's a pathway to protect them. There's a pathway to locally designate them, but it doesn't have to all happen overnight. It can be incrementally done. And so that's why we have the objectives and recommendations trying to give a time frame to them. But which ones actually come first or not, the HPC can definitely try to spearhead that based on all their voluminous research and knowledge that they've encapsulated over the years and learned from doing all these architectural surveys that they've been doing.
Right, but Mr. Wright just said on behalf of the HPC, they're not concerned about the ordinance and disagree with the master plan, which the board members here don't have the luxury to do, right? We are bound by the master plan that has made this designation that it feels the ordinance is vague. And so like your reply that you disagree and don't think it needs to be touched is not encouraging, because it just tells me that, but like really it's putting the cart before the horse, I think, to start expanding designations when there's issues in the ordinance for process.
Can we separate historic designation of specific properties from historic districts? Because I think they're very different, unless I'm wrong, as to the confines on each of them with regard to, personal property, and a historic district is different than in, for a historic building or property, right? Mr. Ross, could you possibly do a little bit of explanation on that?
Sure. There's a lot of individual properties that we've identified. They're included in the 52-page Appendix C. They've been previously identified in past surveys. There's the districts that are surveyed, but then there's also outlying actual individual properties, and those could just be designated by their block and lot. Oftentimes in other towns, I can tell you that homeowners are proud if their house is locally designated, and they even come forward and say, hey, I'd like to, locally designate my property. And oftentimes that's a good way to weigh the ordinance and the process, because the process is important. There's a very lengthy process about, how it's referred to the planning board. Is it, does it fit within the master plan? It gets referred back to the TC. There's a whole process that's spelled out by the ordinance, and that's a good way to test it. And right now you have 12 locally designated historic properties, and they're just the block and lot, those historic properties. And we did recommend to keep doing that. That's where those 10 properties came from. And we said try only one historic district. Maybe that could be the guinea pig for this process. And that's kind of where the ordinance comes in as well, is there's got to be a way to do the local designation that works for everybody. And sometimes it's like, well, maybe we could tweak this, we could do that. And that's really a municipality by municipality thing. They all do it slightly differently. It doesn't mean one's really right or wrong, but the ordinance in general, has been approved by the state of New Jersey. So it is a good one in terms of preservation ordinances in the state. So you should be, proud of that and take solace in that. But the mayor's right. Individual properties are 100% easier because it's just a one-off property. It's not an entire historic district. You're not trying to convince many dozens of homeowners. And so it's always an easier path to local designation. The only problem I've learned over the years is that because they're a one-off, you've got to make sure that in your building department and the zoning office that they know what each one of those properties are. Sometimes it's easier when they're in a district because you know what those boundaries are. When they're each individual property, you just don't want something to fall through the cracks. That's all. If someone comes in for an application or a development or something.
And I don't want to throw off Mr. Fryett's concerns or questions, but with regard to a historic district, is the municipality confined with regard to public infrastructure improvements? For example, if there are like cobblestone swales that are like the gutters and are we confined as a municipality in a district with regard to any public improvements that we have to make in maintenance of our infrastructure and anything like that we would be confined with or have to maybe spend more money on, maybe not, maybe make it better? I mean, I personally am a historic preservation people. I know Don Rickman who you mentioned. So, I find huge value in historic preservation, but I also understand some of the confines with that.
So typically, if it's on the state or national register historic district, the municipality will have to, because that's the Historic Sites Council and the State Register Act, and they do have some responsibility to maintain historic stone walls and swales, and there's a lot of different features that could be part of a repaving process. That's not typical. Even PSE&G, if you're in a state or national historic district and the owners don't want the solar panels on the light poles, they can not do that because it's exempted because it's in a state and national register historic district. On the local level, it's kind of again a municipality by municipality thing. Typically though, the municipalities, they respect that it's a historic district or a historic area, and they usually go to HPC for advice or guidance, informally. They don't have to be bound to anything, but they can say, hey, we have to repave the road and we want to do XYZ. And the HPC, you can use them almost as a, de facto design review board in that sense for historic features and historic properties and protecting the view shed and the streetscape and everything. And I found that works well because Maplewood wouldn't be bound to anything in that circumstance, but you're using the HPC and their resources to kind of gauge their input. So,
And the impact on the township as well, the state and national designations. For example, the village is listed on the state and national register. There are carrots involved with that too. So for example, the $700,000 grant that the township just received to help with capital improvements from the woodland required, it was, partly because that the woodland is part of that state and national historic district. We wouldn't have been eligible for those funds if we had not had that designation.
I just wanted to go back if I could. Although I appreciate, Mayor, there is a huge distinction between historic properties and historic districts. The 271-79 ordinance has the designation of both the sites and the properties. The sites and the districts in one group. And I don't see, I know, Mr. Russ, you mentioned that it involves going to the planning board, but I don't see that in the ordinance. I don't believe that's the case. It originates with nomination and then goes through the HPC that has a hearing, and then there's a report, and then it goes to the township committee. But I don't see anywhere where it goes through the planning board, and I think especially for districts, it really should, for the planning board to review any technical land use implications. So I just want to point that out just as a point of clarification. And just one other question, and then I'll stop monopolizing here. On the design guidelines, there's a call for new design guidelines for new infill housing and renovations in historic districts on pages 3 and page 80, which the only historic district we presently have is the Maplewood Village, but this element calls for an expansion to that, as I mentioned. What would these guidelines look like in your mind? Can you talk us through like what kind of detail or guidelines these guidelines would have?
So that's twofold. There's design guidelines for historic properties, which I believe the HPC is in process of hopefully getting funding for in a future grant application. That would be very important. But then also when redevelopments happen, there's redevelopment guidelines, and often when there's historic properties, you can work in certain design guidelines to make sure that the historic character defining elements or different buildings or purposes of buildings or other type of architecture as part of the buildings can be preserved, retained, whatever it may be. Every redevelopment plan is different, but often that's a good rule of thumb, is to try to work in historic guidelines whenever it's a redevelopment plan that involves historic properties. So it's kind of a two-part thing.
So you would write guidelines specific to each redevelopment plan, but not for a district?
Typically, no. Most towns do not write specific district guidelines. What they do is they'll do design guidelines for the whole Maplewood, the whole township, and there could be different areas where it addresses, in this district, there's certain modern houses. In this district, there's certain Greek revival houses, but it's more general. It's not usually district by district. Each one has design guidelines, and normally you also break it down residential and commercial. So certain design guidelines you're going to give for residential properties, you're not going to give for storefronts in the village, for instance. So those are usually broken out as well.
And so these guidelines are not yet in the works, but it's an ambition of the Historic Preservation Commission to do so. Is my understanding that correct?
Correct.
And would they be like, I know Montclair has both general and and residential historic, and so I appreciate your response there that it would be, by typology. Is it graphic? Is it like, back to the point about being user friendly and partnering with non-experts, right, in that are potential, like homeowners, right? Is there a matrix of what types of projects are trigger full reviews versus administrative oversight? Is there graphic examples? Like, I feel like the guidelines are just so important, and again, like putting the cart before the horse. I feel like that should really be advanced before additional designations. So is there a timeline for that or not yet?
I defer to Chair Wright on the timeline, but to answer your question, yes, design guidelines are extremely helpful in that sense. And also a well-written booklet usually has in the beginning, again, like an introduction to the preservation programs in the municipality. And also, yes, like some diagrams explaining, when you're doing a minor application, you do X. And when you're doing a major application, you do Y. And the commission meets once a month and it's at the municipal building and all this type of stuff. You really, it is difficult. That's why even this historic preservation element is so long. It's just a lot of stuff. It's not a lot of stuff people are normally, understand or grasp very quickly. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of properties. It's a lot of different styles. It's a lot of different architectural stuff. Obviously, more graphics definitely help. You're correct on that. The more visual things people can take cues from, it definitely helps. And inform them what they can do, what they can't do, what materials are acceptable, not acceptable. The more you can help guide them, the less questions you're going to get asked, the less you're going to get bogged down, the less they're going to get frustrated. So I completely agree with you on all those points. And I'll defer to Mr. Wright on, when that hopefully is actually going to be taking place, the application to get design guidelines.
Yeah. It's something that we would need funding to help get done. Without design guidelines, the what's used is the Secretary of Interior standards, which is basically how, the guidance for how to evaluate, various projects that are being proposed. One thing, and this is very confusing. It took me a while to wrap my head around it. The village is on the state and national registers, so the HPC actually has no regulatory authority over any of those buildings. And actually, it doesn't limit what private property owners can do with their property. So we don't have design guidelines for that district. Where we would want to have design guidelines is for a locally designated district, for a district that's designated by our township committee. In the village, the MVA, they have design guidelines for the village, which are probably more along the lines that you'd like to see. So it's something, it's definitely, one of our priorities. Hopefully it's something that we'll be able to move more on next year. We did look into what we could do as a, effort of our volunteers on the commission this year. But it's a lot of work and something we would, ideally have, professionals helping us with.
Chair Pashota, could I ask a question that's sort of unrelated, but related?
Certainly.
Mr. Ross, I think what a lot of us, at least on the governing body and just in town, the evolution of the demolition ordinance is an example of what we've been trying to to do that, I think is in concert with the designation of districts, historic districts, in trying to just, and I use this phrase just from my own, professional background of context sensitive design, that would inhibit or new construction to blend in better with older construction, like to keep the to not adversely impact neighboring properties or an area at all. So I'm just wondering if there's, design guidelines, design is really, really difficult to set firm standards by ordinance. That's why I think contextually attributing guidelines to what exists already, I feel like that's where I keep going to in the many conversations on this topic that we've had in different venues. Just to, in a downtown improvement district, a special improvement district, they have the design guidelines for those commercial properties, and that's actually codified in our ordinance. But for local neighborhoods, so I'm trying to wrap my head around of the balance between what we require by ordinance and how we can legislate this, if you will, without strapping people in so tight that they can't do anything unless it's an exact replica of a 1920s, house, which is not what it's not what I want. I'm fine with modern design. I'm fine with it. It's the contextuality of what's built in a residential district that I think causes concern when the current market seems to be for, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, more house on these same size lots that were built out in the 20s and 30s, right? So I guess I don't know if I've clarified my question, but it just kind of, this is how this goes, right? It just kind of rolls around like we're never going to get anywhere. But I hesitate in that I'm fine with the historic element of the master plan part of it, but I want more the realistic or operational, I should say, aspect of codifying some things that would allow our building department, our community development department to be able to follow through in those standards without necessarily, well, you have a 3-foot setback, side yard setback, and you can't, those kinds of things that are so specific, but more context sensitive. Do you have any advice for me on that? Because it's been driving me nuts.
Yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying. And some places do it better than others. Like I said, there's a little bit of subjectivity because it's historic preservation and it's architecture and design and whatever, but consistency is the most important thing, and that'll protect the township from lawsuits and irate people and everything, as long as you're consistent. And that's where the design guidelines will come in. There's a lot of, different economic brackets of people who own houses, especially in historic districts sometimes. And, you want to be consistent how you approach what they're trying to do. But at the same time, some of them, they'll want to do very large additions to houses. And, how do you balance that with, it's their house, it's their castle, but at the same time, it's going to overwhelm other properties in the historic district. And that's something we grapple with a lot in a lot of towns and a lot of places, is how do we let them have their master bedroom upgrade and their kitchen upgrades, and now they want a 3 or 4 car garage or whatever, and they don't want it to be a carriage house, they want it to be attached, but all the other houses have carriage houses. And so that's where design guidelines really come in to try to some consistency to how you try to keep the neighborhood looking, historic, what it's important for, what it was designated for, what it was significant for, but at the same time, allowing people to make those changes that they just need to make. And you don't want them to tear down the historic house. So even if they keep a small historic house, but they do a larger addition, sometimes that's, kind of the best thing in order to keep that historic property, especially if that part faces the street and the addition or whatever, the garage is in the back where you don't really see it. And so, all those issues come into play. And I think design guidelines and, just very transparent and very consistent in how you go about administering it, that's the most important thing.
So incorporating context sensitivity in design guidelines is a possible thing to do without, not necessarily just height, and because they're getting around height, right? Like they're, and I'm talking more specifically about tear downs or basically practically a demolition, which led to our demolition ordinance. That's just massively increasing the size of a building or a structure on a residential property. And even though they're technically, like whether the attic is full room, like all these things, that these games that are played, it's enormously frustrating, but also understandable. So I worry about whether design guidelines would help us. I want a solution. I want you to please tell me how we can fix this problem, because it's exhausting, honestly.
Right. And Barton, are design guidelines kind of like a distillation of the Secretary of Interior standards to make them more accessible and friendly, with perhaps some local spin as well?
I mean, they're guidelines, so they're flexible in a way. Now, keep in mind, some towns like Cape May, they have design standards. So those are standards. So it's actually a little bit different. Guidelines are what most New Jersey towns have. So keep that in mind when you're going through this. I think Ocean Grove also has standards for their historic district. I find it a little more rigid. The guidelines give you a little more leeway to use common sense, because no two sites are exactly the same. But the more you can kind of guide people in a consistent manner, and, again, if it's like, they're allowed to build to 35 feet and they want a house that's 35 foot tall, but their historic house is only 20 foot tall. Like, there's ways you could do it in the back, and maybe you connect it with a hyphen, or, so what you see on the streetscape still looks the way it's always looked, but they can get more square footage out of their historic house by doing an addition where you don't notice it as much. That kind of approach works well, and it keeps people who live in historic districts happy they still live in the historic district. Because if they weren't in a historic district, they would have just torn it down and started from scratch. So it makes them think a little bit more, makes their architect think a little bit more about how they do things. And usually it turns out much better, but having a robust set of design guidelines will definitely help for any locally designated historic districts that Maplewood does.
And we would need to codify that in the ordinance. Even though they're guidelines and not
referenced,
standards.
It definitely has to be referenced in an ordinance, yes.
Okay.
And certainly with any districting efforts, we want to do a lot of public education, so people, aren't subject to, like, myths about preservation, and know how it would impact them as a homeowner. For example, one thing that changed recently, maybe between when the master plan was updated and now, was that the Secretary of Interior's standards, they issued an update regarding historic materials. A lot of the materials that were used to build these houses in town in the 20s, you just, don't exist anymore, or are exorbitantly expensive. So they've given, guidance on the use of substitute materials. So, for example, wood siding, you can use something like hardy board, or, wood windows. There are acceptable replacements that would, meet historic standards. So there's been a lot of changes like that in the last few years that would make projects on designated homes not as difficult as people might think.
Any other members of the planning board who want to share thoughts on this or have questions for either Mr. Wright or Mr. Ross?
I have a question for clarity, just to understand. In the first objective, you have identifying, let me go back to it, identifying all of the, to identify and protect the historic resources, and you have that broken down. Then when I go into the appendix, specifically where you have, when I get to that page number, sorry, 11 Appendix C, and it says historic property inventory listings. It says that's an exhaustive list of all historic resources identified. Does that mean everything in that appendix is the universe of what you anticipate you would be drawing from in your first objective? So these are, so that's your universe, is what's in that appendix.
Yeah, so I think, like, any properties or districts that, we would pursue for designation, like, say in the next 10 years, like, most likely they would be ones that are on this list. Over the next 10 years, we would also be conducting additional surveys of neighborhoods that haven't been surveyed yet, so that might reveal additional properties that are of historic interest. But this is, I mean, this is such a big list, this will keep us busy for a while. But
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of other neighborhoods that we would like to study. One thing that has been, I think, a great partnership in the last 10 years has been between the HPC and the Duran Hedden House. So there have been, after the commission did the College Hill survey and the Gulf Island survey, all of that in-depth research that was done for those projects, the Duran Hedden House and Garden leveraged to do even deeper research, and then do a public exhibit on those neighborhoods, which residents of those neighborhoods and other people in town really appreciated learning so much about those neighborhoods. And last weekend, I then used the Duran Hedden's exhibit materials to do a walking tour of College Hill, which was very well attended, and just helps build public engagement with the with the town's history and individual neighborhood histories, which I think is really unique and valuable. And to plug, there'll be a walking tour of Ridgewood Road this Saturday.
Is that the one that starts at Morrow Church?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful.
And the College Hill one was great. We had like 45, 50 people, which was crazy. And from outside of College Hill, like all over the place, which was interesting.
And another member of the Township Committee, Malia Herman, just commented in the chat saying that it was fantastic. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you both for your presentation, as well as your continued discussion with members of the planning board, to continue to forward the discussion of the importance of historic preservation, what's in the historic preservation element. I think this has been a good starting point for a better understanding of the properties and other assets within Maplewood that are historic and why it's important to protect them. So thank you both.
Thank you all.
At this point, I think it's time to move on to the one application that we are hearing this evening, case PB 25-04 for 62 Pearson Road. Is the applicant here? And
Good evening.
I'd
Yes,
like
my
the-
name is Matthew Posada. I represent the applicant, and the applicant is also present on this Zoom call.
Great. Could you do me a great favor and pronounce the applicant's last name for me so I don't butcher it?
Sure. Well, actually, the original applicant was Tom Welsh. However, since the submission, the co-applicant, if you will, being the property maintenance group, has now closed on the project, this property, I should say. So the applicant and property owner are today both the property maintenance group. And as a representative of the property maintenance group, I have present here today Anthony Nardone.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful, Mr. Posada.
Sure.
All right. Well then, at this point, I'll turn it over to you. I assume you have some introductory comments before we hear testimony. Is that correct?
The reality is it's pretty limited. As the board already knows, this is a fully conforming subdivision application. What we're looking to do here is at 62 Pearson Road, we're looking to subdivide the subject lot itself, essentially right down the middle, whereby the left-hand parcel, which would be known as 138.01, will be approximately 6,500 square feet. And on the right-hand side, or the proposed 138.02, will be approximately 7,800 square feet. Existing on the site today is a single-family home as well as a garage. Both structures would be demolished if the board found favorable for the minor subdivision. In addition, we are in receipt of the engineering report from this board dated October 24th, 2025. We've had an opportunity to review that entire report, and we agree to all technical comments. We will adhere to them and satisfy them if this board will find favorable as part of our resolution compliance requirements. For tonight, since this is a fully conforming subdivision application, we do not have any expert witnesses to testify on the application itself. However, I do have both the property owner, developer, and general contractor, Anthony Nardone, available, who can discuss any fact questions regarding the subject application.
All right, then. So you want to go to questions at this time from members, starting with members of the planning board?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well then,
Wait a
are
minute,
there
if I may,
certainly, Mr.
Bunya,
Carlson?
are we conducting a hearing here? Or is this an informal?
No, this is, from my understanding, this would be the hearing itself for the minor subdivision. But because the subdivision is fully conforming and we're not proposing any any structures, I should say, there's no need for actual witness testimony regarding either civil engineering or architectural. However, as far as it goes with the actual subdivision itself, and that processes would be A, handled by my office, or B, the actual property owner / developer, who I do have available here today, Mr. Anthony Nardone, who could answer any of those questions regarding the construction of the subject site at a later date, which those plans again would be before the zoning officer, unless the variance were to be triggered.
I have a question for Mr. Edelson. So they're not presenting sworn testimony, but given that this is a hearing, and I anticipate that there will be questions from members of the board, do we need to swear in Mr. Posada or the applicant?
Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Edelson.
Michael, you're on mute.
You're on mute. We are missing your wisdom because we can't hear you. Let me see if, oh, I can't.
Is that why?
Unmute. There we go.
Victory.
Okay.
Much better.
If the applicant is here and people have questions for the applicant should be sworn. If people have questions about the presentation being made by Mr. Posada, the attorney, you can ask him questions, but he's doesn't get sworn, and there should not be factual type questions, more procedural and technical questions.
Okay. So I'm thinking that perhaps we need to swear in the applicant.
Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to. Let me bring up Mr. Anthony Nardone, who's the principal of Property Maintenance Group.
I'm here, Matt.
Terrific. I guess Mr. Ellison, you'll swear him in, and then I'll
There you are.
qualify
The chair will swear him in. I don't swear at people.
him.
Mr. Nardone, do you swear that the testimony you're going to give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Right. Thank you. So, so at this point, then, if there are, we will start with questions from members of the planning board, and then proceed to questions from members of the public who wish to ask questions.
And if
So
I may,
starting,
Board Chairman, can I please qualify Mr. Nardone as an expert in general contracting in the event there's any questions regarding construction?
certainly.
Great. Mr. Nardone, why don't you just provide us your educational background and also years of experience in the field?
I graduated school from NJIT with a degree in civil engineering. And I hold an MBA in finance from Seton Hall University. And I've been doing construction management for about 30 plus years. And I've either built or rehabbed probably close to 700 homes throughout the state of New Jersey. I do hold a builder's license, a general contractor's license, real estate broker's license, among the various other certificates and licenses I hold.
Okay. Can this board accept him as an expert in construction?
Certainly.
Terrific. Thank you. Just wanted to get that on the
Thank you. Thank you. No, that's helpful. All right. So so we will start with members of the planning board only at this time. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Nardone or Mr. Posada about the application?
I do.
Certainly. Go ahead, Mayor Adams.
And Michael, you'll tell me if I'm out of line or not. But I think what maybe Mr. Carlson's seeming a little bit alarm on what we're hearing tonight. You know, normally, and as you just heard from the long discussion and about the historic preservation element of the master plan and some of the goals the township has right now with regard to you know, overdevelopment or contextually sensitive design on things. I mean, this is a beautiful little house on a nice oversized lot abutting the golf course, and so while everything's conforming, and then if it's not, you'll go to the zoning board. Just curious as to the plans by Mr. Nardone for this lot. I'm assuming subdivided to two single family houses, or what are your plans for this subdivision?
Correct. Two single family homes.
And then as part of the application process, this also has to go to the Historic Preservation Committee as well. So they would be part of that review.
And the application's already sitting there, and I'm told that they have a hearing in December. I don't recall the date off the top of my head.
They have a hearing in December, so before there could be any issuance of a building permit, and mind you, we haven't submitted any plans yet for a single family home, but before that could even be issued, we would have to first have this meeting before the committee, which is scheduled in December.
Understood. But I'm asking the applicant for like any thoughts on, you know, to this board as to what you're thinking of doing on this property.
Again, to construct two single family homes, one on each lot, that are conforming to the ordinance. Again, it's still an early development. You know, we have to get past this part, which is basically draw a line down the center of the of the property, and then, work within the confines, to build two homes, to today's standards without overdeveloping it.
And something that would be consistent with the character of the neighborhood, right? Not out of place.
Correct.
Hopefully, yes. Thanks.
I sat on the zoning board for 13 years in my town. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Chairman, vice chairman, I get it.
Great, thanks.
Madam Chair, if I might,
Certainly. Please go ahead, Mr. Lemanowitz.
Mr. Posada, I spoke with Mr. Klein of your
Got it.
office. I don't know if you've spoken to him on this. And I touched on it in my report and just kind of want to bring it out to see what the reaction is. Right now, there is a 25-foot wide easement up the right side of the property. So 25 feet out of the current 110-foot wide lot is, I'll say, not substantial as far as a hindrance to development. If we subdivide the property, that 25-foot wide easement is now on a 60-foot wide lot. Combined with a 7-foot side yard setback, that restricts your building width to 28 feet, which the existing house would fit on. I'm not sure if the intent is to build something of that same size. And I guess the concern that I have, and I'm not sure if the board has the concern, is if we are exacerbating the impact on the development of if we're exacerbating the impact of the easement on development and potentially creating a self-imposed hardship that someone may claim in the future for a side yard setback, a facade setback, a facade variance, because you might want to go deeper to get more floor area, so on and so forth. And I was wondering if you spoke to Mr. Klein about that and have anything to share or contribute.
Absolutely, I did speak to him. I would say this easement is the proverbial elephant in the room when you look at the plans. And it is our position that we can develop the lot without disturbing the easement at all. We've already done plot plans and we know that we can satisfy these setbacks. So we have taken that into consideration to ensure there wouldn't be an added layer of hardship.
Well, disturbing the easement's really not the board's issue. That's between you and whoever holds the easement. My issue is, are we going to see a variance for a side yard because the easement's taking up lot width, or because of the depth that the house has to be to get a saleable, and that's obviously subjective, saleable size? Are we going to get into a facade variance? Because once you go past 40 feet in depth, your 28-foot wide building envelope now only goes to a 26-foot wide building envelope. So there's
Right.
two potential variances just off the top of my head that can be related to this easement, calling the easement a hardship. And the idea that you're narrowing the lot is exacerbating that hardship. And if your position is now that you're not going to that this subdivision is going to be that the subdivision can be granted with the condition that there not be variances with respect to or using the presence of the easement as a hardship, then I think that might resolve the whole issue.
Well, this is a fully conforming application, so pursuant to law, we don't have to agree to any conditions of approval, and I say the most respectful way possible. So we would not agree to that condition, but I would tell you that we have already designed on a conceptual level as to whether or not we can satisfy the setbacks. And what we have already been able to see on paper is the answer is yes. So that is our intention, because we're not looking to have to go back to the board. But again, as I stated, this is a fully conforming application, so there is no jurisdiction for conditions when there's no variance relief being requested.
Okay, but there's also the situation where if Mr. Nardone decides he's going to sell this lot to help pay to build the house on the, whatever, somebody else comes in, and now this goes back to the zoning board with a self-imposed hardship.
Well, I think that would be between either Mr. Nardone or the subsequent purchaser to deal with the other party to that easement, as that easement's between two private parties to satisfy that. And I would presume that would probably be the answer.
Well, I'm gonna stop here and see what the rest of the board is, because if I'm barking up a tree that doesn't need to be barked at, I don't want to continue to take the board's time. But again, I'm just expressing it's a little bit, it's a little bit of a situation, because it's going to be a house that is going to be a little narrow compared to what the board's probably used to seeing built on in this type of neighborhood.
Yeah, I had a similar question just about that easement and the resulting buildable footprint of the lot to the northwest, once divided. What would the width be of that site? I see it dashed in on your on one of the plans provided. Just says sheet 1 of 1. Do you know what the width of that property would be? It's a 60-foot property, and the easement is how wide?
25.
25 feet. So, yep. 25. 35.
Yeah, it's 35 minus the 7-foot setback, leaves you with
28.
Sorry, I missed the math. And so it's 60 feet minus the
25.
25.
Setback. And then
Minus
the additional
the
setback.
7 foot.
Yep. Pursuant to the zoning ordinance.
28 feet would be the footprint width. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. That was my question. I mean, yeah, narrow, but certainly not undevelopable. Could build a house in that size.
I have a follow-up question. So, and the driveway is not on the property line though, right now, so is the easement moving over to the property line? Is that the idea? Is it?
No, the easement's staying as is. We're not touching the easement at all.
And how much space between, I'm just trying to make the math work. It looks like there's another 10 or 15 feet on the side. The driveway easement is like the like blotchy looking space, right?
Yeah, and if you look at the dotted lines as well.
Perhaps,
right to the left hand.
Mr. Posada, would you like to share your screen so that we can make sure we're all envisioning the same thing?
Let me see if I can pull it up. Just give me one moment.
Certainly.
Matt, if not, I got it up. I can pull
All
it
right,
up.
you can pull it up, Anthony.
Hang on a second. Let me get some stuff off my screen here. All right. I can share the screen.
You should have rights to do that. Yes. I think that might help ensure that we're all.
Everybody can see the screen?
Of course.
All right.
Yes,
So,
we
Anthony,
can see
you
your
wanna just
screen.
Show with your mouse what we're looking at here. Yep.
So see this line right here?
Yes.
Right there's a line that we're discussing. See that little, see where it says iron pin found right here?
Yes.
So that's basically the line we're talking about for the easement. I zoomed in a little bit. I can zoom out.
And you can build directly to that easement line.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And you would be permitted to put a driveway on the easement portion of the property?
Well, the
correct?
easement is the driveway now.
Right. Okay.
If you go out to the property now, when you come down this easement and you look up here, see how it goes off to the back, in the back of the house, and then to the neighbor, it goes off to the right. So the easement is the driveway. So think of it like a shared driveway almost, if you would, in common terms.
Sure.
That's why we're not going to touch the easement.
Well, I think the concern, Mr. Nardone, is that you may well need to come in or may well think you need to come in for a variance in regard to the house that's going to be built on that lot, the right-hand lot with the easement, because of the existence of the easement there. And so I think we want to know what your position is going to be when you come in and say, well, we need 5 variances to put the size of the house that we want to put on the lot because of the existence of the easement. And I think some members of the board would not be favorably inclined in that regard.
Again, as far as it goes for proposals of a single family home, we are going to do it. We have done a plot plan which shows that we can do it without triggering any variances. That is our goal in mind. Yes, we definitely have said on the record that a 28-foot width single family home is narrow, but at the same time too, it's not completely out of the ordinary to develop a home of that size, provided you satisfy all the other presumptions that a homeowner would have for the layouts. So as far as it goes, it's our intention to have it conforming. But again, this is a fully conforming application. So for conditions, we're not interested in testifying to.
I just would like to note that it's not 25-foot rear setback, it's 25% of the lot depth. So this is 130-foot depth, so it would be a 32.5-foot setback, rear setback. I know this is just, you're showing the envelope, but the setback is greater than what's shown.
Understood. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the planning board with any comments or questions? All right then. So Mr. Nardone, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen so I can see more folks on the screen. But we may need to refer back to this at a later point, depending on where the conversation goes from here. At this time, I want to give members of the public an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and his attorney. In order to do this in an expeditious manner and keep order, please use the raise your hand function. When I will call on each person in order, when I call on you, please give us your name and your street address for the record, and then you can go ahead with your question. So if you do have a question or comment regarding the applicant, please use the raise your hand function. We're going to start with, I don't know if it's Barnes or Mr. Barnes, but please go ahead, state your name and your address for the record and go ahead with your comment or question.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Barnes Evans. I live at 64 Pearson Road, which is the directly adjoining property to 62 Pearson, and I'm the other party in the 25-foot easement with the shared common driveway and air easement recorded by this board in '97. Obviously, that runs with the land, as noted here. I guess my question, hearing that there'll be nothing to sort of change either the tract itself or the location of the driveway within the tract. There's a note on the plan speaking about the stone driveway is to be reconfigured with the easement. That's ambiguous to me. I'm not sure what the implication is of that. Could you speak to that, please?
Anthony, that's a direct question for you to answer.
Oh, okay. Our plan right now is not to touch the easement at all. Is to leave the easement other than what goes over the easement line in the back. As you're aware, the driveway goes to the back of the house to the garage.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the part that we would obviously convert to grass at some point, but our plan is not to touch the easement at all.
And Mr. Nardone, just one quick question for you. As part of this application, you're not proposing any improvements today, right? Just the subdivision line?
Just the subdivision, no improvements to the easement, correct.
Thank you.
And I guess I wasn't clear on the where we landed with the issue of the kind of maybe the need for a variance. I mean, it obviously, the lot shows a 60-foot wide lot. I mean, it's sort of, about 60 feet of buildable space, obviously. So, they can, is there a variance that will be needed to build on that lot? Or do you think there is actually a conforming house that can be built there?
Again, we're not proposing anything here today for proposed improvement, but to answer your question, can a conforming lot be developed on this site? The answer is yes. Could a single family be developed that requires variance relief? The answer is also yes. We're not there yet, but we have done the plot layout to show that we're not triggering any variance relief with setbacks. It's doable.
I just have one more point to raise, if I may.
Sure, certainly. Go ahead.
So there's a 72-inch wide London plane tree marked as to be removed from the proposed, I think, southeast lot. Our neighbors confirm that's with an arborist, that's a healthy tree. The NJDEP has confirmed the writing. We have a letter from them that based on those measurements, a 6-foot wide specimen is probably the largest known of its species in the state. So a so-called champion tree, as the gentleman from the Historic Preservation Committee alluded to earlier. So it strikes me that removing what might be New Jersey's biggest London plane just to create a second lot contradicts Maplewood's own stated environmental goals. We also believe it's probably worthy of protection from a historical preservation standpoint as a heritage tree. And our neighbor who sort of abuts the other side of the property, I think also has concerns about the potential flooding impact that removing such a large, healthy tree, such an extensive root system would have on our property. We've had a series of historical issues with flooding in this neighborhood and drainage. And, I think we really have some questions around sort of, besides the easement alignment, the slope and the tree preservation and the environmental impact issues. Just want to sort of get more information on those before any decisions made.
I'm sure Mr. Edelson will correct me if I'm wrong, but considering this is just a subdivision application, if this board were to find in the affirmative of this application, when we go to submit for a single family home, it'd be subject to the review of the tree removal plan, as well as the stormwater analysis by the township's engineer. And then pursuant to their comments, it wouldn't really be discretionary. We would have to comply.
Well, Mr. Posada, I know this might not be possible of being answered, but is the existence of the easement going to be used as a hardship to allow you to build on the lot to the right?
We don't know that answer at this time. We don't have construction plans yet or architectural plans drawn.
Well, see, that's one of the problems I think some of the board members have, because what you're really asking them to do is to allow you to build on, I don't know how wide it is, a 24-foot lot?
28.
Oh, okay, a 28-foot lot.
Yes, but again, this is a fully conforming application pursuant to Pizzo versus Martin. As long as you have a fully conforming minor subdivision application, no conditions need to be placed on the record.
Okay, so understand when you come back for that variance, you're not going to have an easy time.
Absolutely understand that. That we absolutely understand.
Because if it's a hardship, it's a self-created hardship.
Understood the board's position.
Okay.
Michael, is that specified to the zoning board of adjustment? Were they to have to go to the zoning board rather than the planning board for a variance?
Zoning board.
It would be the zoning board.
Yeah,
For
at
all
that
single
point,
family homes, go to the zoning board for C or D variance relief.
Yes, I understand that. That's why I'm asking our attorney.
Okay, zoning board, let them come
Right.
here. You'd like that.
Yeah.
You'd be lying in wait.
Well, I mean, I think, I think what Mr. Edelson is so astutely pointing out is that, and thank you to the neighboring resident for raising it, because I was going to ask about the mature trees on the property, but this one in particular. So if we're going to pass this, as you say, Mr. Posada, because it's as of right, it's no blah, blah, blah. It's, you're kind of setting up for, okay, you have no choice, planning board, but to grant this, and then we're gonna go for a variance. And we're gonna say, oh, because of this 25-foot easement, we need to do this and we need to remove this tree. That is, the largest in the state, as opposed to, not removing a tree and going to a different board to do so. It tastes funny in my mouth, to be honest, and I mean, Mr. Daffis will back me up on some of our frustrations on the governing body with things like this that try to skirt kind of the intent of ordinances, or whether it's tree protection or anything else, that applicants come before us so they can do whatever, is economically beneficial to them on sites like this. So, yeah, I just say that to agree with Mr. Edelson and our engineer here that I worry about a self-imposed ordinance, and your knowledge that those of us on the governing body who are on this planning board cannot attend or testify at the zoning board of adjustment in this regard. I don't know, Mr. Edelson, does that mean other members of the planning board cannot attend said meeting? Or just the governing body? To kind of give some color to, what we're talking about right now, to that board.
Well, the members of the planning board can, of course, attend.
Okay.
I mean, the problem is from the township's, the board's view, the driveway is there. If it's a hardship, it's a self-created hardship. It's not one that means we have to give them a variance to build something that we do not think belongs in the space which is left in that on that lot. Okay, you want to continue?
Certainly. Mr. Easton, did you have any other questions or comments?
Is that for me? Sorry, is that Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Yes. No, I think that's fine for now. I think the board is well aware of my concerns, and but I see my neighbor has her hand up, so I'll lower mine.
Certainly, certainly. So, Ms. Ellen, please state your full name for the record and your street address, and then go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ellen Seidman, and I live at 58 Pearson Road. So I'm just going to follow up on what Mr. Evans raised about the tree that is marked on the plan submitted as TBR, to be removed. For the record, I just wanted to say here that this tree is considered healthy, and I know that because it was mentioned to me by a tree expert who was assessing the tree a couple of weeks ago, and by my own arborist, Ryan O'Case of Save a Tree. So this tree is healthy and is likely close to 200 years old. Mr. Ross had touched on historic trees in our area, and these trees are the pride and joy of many of us who live here. And there is a New Jersey big tree conservation program that promotes the conservation of large and historic trees. And they maintain a New Jersey big tree registry. And I was recently put in touch with them. And an administrator sent a letter saying that the tree is likely, quote, the largest of its species in New Jersey and of exceptional historical and ecological significance. And so, allowing ultimately this tree to be taken down, I don't would sit well with the citizens of Maplewood. I actually, since finding out about this meeting, I only found out yesterday, I started a petition last night and already got hundreds of signatures about not taking down this beautiful old sycamore tree. So I am hoping that when it comes to it, there will not be a permit issued that allows this beautiful old historical tree to be taken down. I also just want to add on to what Mr. Barnes had said about water drainage issues. There are water drainage issues sometimes on our street, and I'm more towards the downward part of the slope. And I do have concerns that removing a tree like this, which is well-established, very deep root system, could cause water to come onto our property from runoff. We've already had some water coming onto our property in recent history from their property, the 62 Pearson Road. I actually put in a phone call to this company. They didn't call me back from the property, but I have concerns about water runoff as well. But last, in relation to the developer's proposal to subdivide the lot, I just want to leave everyone with a mention from the Maplewood Master Plan, which is adopted by this board just 2 years ago. On page 4, page 80, it notes that the importance of lessening the incentive to subdivide oversized lots for development of single family homes. So I will just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seidman. Would either Mr. Posada or Mr. Nardone like to comment in response to Ms. Seidman's
I
comments?
think the only thing we would say is that it's duly noted, we understand, but both the tree removal plan as well as drainage is not before this board, but will be before the township engineer if this board were finally affirmative and the applicant were to move forward with a single family home proposal.
Also want to add that no work has been done on site. So any kind of water drainage issue that may or may not exist has been there long before I've been on that site.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, please go ahead with your comment or question. And please, for the fullness of the record, please give us your address as well.
Sure. My name is Daniel Wright. I live at 41 Oberlin Street. Maybe this is more a question for the planning board, but is a subdivision approval, is that considered a development approval?
Well, it's a step in the total process, but it's not the be-all and end-all of approvals.
Okay. The reason I ask is in the HPC's demo ordinance, there's a line that says the provision of basically the demo ordinance shall not apply to any property which has received a development approval before the planning or zoning board if such approval contemplates the demolition of the structure. So it seems like this process is contemplating the demolition of the structure. So I'm just trying to figure out how it relates to the demo review ordinance. If this is considered, I guess, a development approval, then I guess we need to figure out process for the demo review.
Mr. Edelson, am I correct in saying that if this board were to approve the subdivision, we could, and presumably would, make it contingent upon the approval for and completion of the demolition of the existing property, the existing home, because the subdivision would go through the middle of that building, so it would have to be completed in order to finalize the subdivision, correct?
Well, I don't know where it would have to go.
Well, the line for the subdivision goes through the existing single family home on the property. So in order to, if we were to approve the subdivision, it could it could be and perhaps should be contingent upon the demolition, which would be required to go through the necessary process of HPC review and approval under the demolition ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and that's just to define it a little better. That's because that for the building to remain, you'd need variances. And no variance is being requested to let the building remain. So it's got to go before the subdivision is perfected and that line is created.
Right. Mr. Wright, does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, it's so yes.
It would be a contingency.
Okay.
So if for some reason for whatever reason, the existing single family home were not to be demolished, then there would be no subdivision.
Correct. If they are committing to demolish that home, they have to demolish that home.
If it meets with, if it passes through the process, the demolition process where it's reviewed first by HPC, et cetera.
Yes.
Right.
Right, because after the resolution is issued, then the applicant has to show compliance to the condition. This is a condition. At that point, once all those conditions are resolved, and I write a letter saying the conditions are resolved, you can go ahead and sign the board, the town officials can sign the plans and deeds perfecting the subdivision.
I'm going to go back to Ms. Simon and then I'll go to Ms. Tui.
Thank you. Just a quick note, Mr. Nardone noted that no work had been done on the property. Just for the record, an oil tank was removed, and that's when my water issues started. So I just wanted to state that.
The oil tank was in the other side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tui, please go ahead, state your full name and and your address. And then go ahead with your question or comment.
I'm Maggie Tui, and I live at 52 Pearson Road. A few houses down from the property that you're discussing. And I guess two things. I just think about how irresponsible it is right now with our climate the way it is, and weather being what it is, and heat being what it is, to cut down a tree of that size and that age, to think about the species that are in that tree. Like, who are we to decide that those things don't matter? That's the first thing. And even if that tree is not taken down, building on that property and having the equipment on the property is going to kill the roots, and that tree will die within 4 years of any kind of construction because the roots will be damaged. So I just think it's an incredibly irresponsible thing to do. That's all. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who have any questions or want to share any comments with respect to this application in support of, in opposition to? This would be the time to share them. Okay, I don't see any further comments, so I'm going to close the public comment at this time, and we will go forth and the planning board will deliberate. Simply as a reminder, members of the public are welcome to stay and listen, but not actively participate in the board's deliberation of the application. Is there any member of the planning board who wants to share their thoughts with respect to the application?
I'd like to ask Mr. Edelson a couple questions. So I understand from the applicant's attorney that basically this is as of right. So I ask what powers this board has to approve or disapprove in their vote of this subdivision. Whether, you know, yeah, that's a good enough question, Michael.
Yes, it's a wonderful question.
Thank you.
Well, you can approve it with conditions. I think you could probably even disapprove it.
Okay, so conditions can include perhaps preservation of this tree or no?
Yes. Well, technically, no. The tree has no legal rights.
Yes.
Okay. It's not something that we are allowed to protect unless there's a reason other than just protecting the tree.
Right.
So if they own the property and they want to kill the tree and cut the tree down, they can do that.
Well, not entirely, right? We have an ordinance that requires approval, right? By
Yes,
the
yes,
Maplewood.
yes, but that's not the board's
Right.
purview.
So would that come into effect, say, so the tree ordinance requires review by the 2 township committee members of Sustainable Maplewood to do a tree hearing. That tree hearing takes place with a request to take down a tree that either was denied by the arborist because of it's a perfectly healthy tree and it's over X number of, inches diameter and no. So, but if a board approves this board approving this subdivision wouldn't give permission for this applicant to take down that tree. What would trigger that would be if they need a variance to work around the easement and the tree in order to build what they want to build, the zoning board would have to approve it. And I guess what I'm asking, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this or not, whether the tree ordinance takes effect, in which case the board's approval.
Mayor
that.
Adams,
Yeah.
Mayor Adams, if I'm not mistaken, and I trust the applicant and his attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, the easement would be on one of the subdivided properties, the tree is on the other subdivided property.
I know, but the easement and the tree could confine what they can do on the property, so that's what I'm talking about. So if they are fine with the easement, for example, and or design around that, but then they have a 200-year-old tree that's in the way of that design. That's my concern, right? So,
but I think that they would be designing around the easement on one of the subdivided properties, and then if they couldn't take down the tree, they would have to design around the tree on the other subdivided property. They're not both, if the property were to be subdivided, they're not both, they would not both be on the same property.
right.
Is that correct, Mr. Posada? I'm sorry.
The site locations for the easement of the tree, yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying, does that make, so that's what I'm asking about this, like what the constraints are on this board. If it's as of right to do the subdivision, but we're hearing all sorts of concerns about it, about what the future development. I mean, let's be real. Typically when somebody's coming with a subdivision here, they show us some idea of what they're doing, and it's almost intentionally not in this case. So
They're not telling us anything. I don't know exactly what our tree removal ordinance requires them to do. But everything you're saying is correct.
As always, Michael, right?
as always. And then some.
Yeah.
I have a question. And maybe Mr. Lemanowitz could even help with that. One of the people who lives nearby, Ms. Tui, had also testified that possibly the construction, I know nothing about this, subdividing could actually hurt the roots of the tree. Does anyone with any expertise think that there is some credence to that? Because I have not studied the plan, but I'd be curious to hear from the intelligence within the planning board.
Except there is no plan. It's just a subdividing the lot, so we have no idea where the construction would be.
Right, but I guess, yeah, I haven't studied the plan. I mean,
But
are you
that,
building foundations? What are you doing? I understand what you're saying, Mayor Adams. I'm just trying to
right, I
understand
hear
that
you.
part of the puzzle.
Mhm.
I mean, not being an arborist, because I'm not, generally, the tree roots extend as far as the canopy extends. And now how far you could cut into those tree roots without damaging it, I would think depends on the tree, depends on the soil, depends on a whole lot of different things. But you know, so I'm gonna end it end it right there because I can't really answer that definitively because I think it's a little. I don't think I have the information. I think you need more information that say just how much of that tree root system can be damaged or cut away from via a construction of a foundation or whatever. You know, before you actually kill the tree.
But if I'm not mistaken, the tree is within the building envelope that would exist for the subdivided property, correct? Am I reading that right?
Yes, the tree is along the um, left side of the building envelope. It's the trunk is just inside the envelope, and you know the tree canopy. I mean, I don't have a picture. I could probably pull it up on Google just how big that canopy is. Um, and again,
But
that's a
I think
very
it's worth
generalized.
I think it's worth noting that the trunk of the tree is within the building envelope, which means that most of the root system is within the building envelope.
I'd say that's a fair statement.
So in theory, could the tree create a second hardship that for the builder when they come back, since the tree hasn't been reviewed yet? Could the tree create a second potential hardship in addition to the easement issue?
Well, if an applicant comes in and says, I want a side yard setback so I can move my building somewhere it's not supposed to be in order to save the tree, then I guess you could potentially make that argument. And I'm looking at the street view on Google, and the Google date is wow, August of 2013. It's an old picture. And it looks like the canopy actually hangs over the house that's there now.
Yeah, I see the same picture. I don't know if it's possible to screen share, but I'm looking at the same picture as you are.
There's the share button. There's the share button.
Mr. Edelson, are we permitted to put a contingency to protect the tree, or does that require a review by DPW per the tree ordinance and a request for a
There has to
tree
be
permit?
something in the tree ordinance which gives us that right. I don't
Okay.
know what is exactly in the tree ordinance.
Fair enough. But given that we do have a tree ordinance
Yes.
and that any property owner who wishes to take down a tree with a diameter of more than 12 inches is required to get a tree permit. We could, of course, say that if granted, the subdivision is contingent upon
Compliance with our tree removal ordinance.
exactly, just as we would do for the demo ordinance.
Yes.
But I guess the question is to
I mean,
elaborate.
he's not doing it. He's not here for any permit to do anything where that tree is at the moment.
Understood, but the plan does say that that tree is to be removed. So putting a contingency that it gets the proper approval for the removal of the tree would be within our purview, correct?
Yes, yes.
But can I expand upon that? But if we believe, but we don't know because we're not arborists, that the canopy goes over the house and the roots go where they would sort of need to build. So we kind of know, and again, I'm not doing a ruling, if we believe that we say this is good, but we know that subdividing will kill the tree, where is our liability here, I guess is my question.
Well, they take an appeal and they win.
Well, I think some of it depends on order of operations, right? If we approve a subdivision with the contingencies for the demo of the existing single family home and the tree being removed, as they've indicated that they're going to, Mr. Nardone clearly stated that they plan to build 2 single family homes, and they've shown us the building envelope for each of the subdivided properties, and it is his intent to take down the tree. So if either of those is not fulfilled, for whatever reason, the single family home is not demoed, it is not permitted to be demoed by HPC, or something along that property stops that home from being demolished, or the tree is not able to be removed because there is no permit for it, and it goes through the process to determine the ordinary process pursuant to our tree ordinance, then the subdivision does not get perfected. The subdivision never happens. Is that, I think, so do I have that right, Mr. Edelson?
The subdivision does not, to be perfected, does not require that the tree stay or that the tree be removed, or the tree can be removed. I'm not familiar with the details of the tree removal ordinance. And unfortunately, I do not think that the state's ordinances in regard to tree removal are going to help us, but maybe. So I don't.
Okay. Mr. Carlson, please go ahead.
Well, I was really just going to expound on the last comments you and Mr. Edelson made. Isn't the applicant subject to the tree removal and demo provisions, whether we act or not?
Yes.
And it's the same provisions and the same whatever.
Well, no, I think the demo situation is a little bit different because the single family home on the property is in the middle of the property and the line for the subdivision goes through it. So if the house is not demolished, the properties can't be subdivided. You can't have a house straddling the 2 properties. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
That's an example of a condition being imposed on the subdivision, isn't it?
Yes.
No, it's not a condition. The issue is that in order for you got to look at it this way. If the house is there and the line is drawn, you now have nonconformities. So unless the applicant now asks for a variance to allow the house to stay and violate side yard setbacks, we can't subdivide the lot until the house is out of the way. Because he's not asking for the variances that he needs to keep it there. So it has to be out of the way before that line is officially drawn.
So that would require going through HPC for approval of a demolition ordinance.
Correct. A conditional approval is not really, it's not the approval. It's like, we're going to approve it as soon as you do this.
Right.
And the issue is, as soon as you subdivide, as soon as you tear the house down, we will give you your approval. That's what it's essentially saying.
So are
But the
we
tree is
reviewing
different.
this are we reviewing this in the wrong order? Meaning?
No, we would need to put a contingency on the approval.
Condition, yeah.
Yes, a condition, sorry.
I am looking at our, not to be a bearer of, I don't know, maybe not, but in our tree removal ordinance, it does say the removal of a specimen tree is allowed if it stands in the way of development projects approved by the planning board or the board of adjustment, or are permitted by right of zoning. And if it is within the permitted building footprint, I don't know if if the tree, making that a contingency, it seems like there's an out in the tree ordinance for this exact condition. So I don't know.
What section are you in?
Section E. So, 227-8 permit required, section E.
Because in the paragraph at the beginning says no person shall remove any tree 12 inches or more in caliper or authorize the removal of such tree on any land within the township unless the owner of such tree or the person authorized by the owner removes it. All these legal jargon, you guys. Said tree first obtain a permit in accordance with section 227-8A. Permits in accordance with 227-8A are also required to remove any trees in any projects that received approval from the planning board and or zoning board of adjustment. So permits are required.
Right, but then, it does, no permit shall be issued by the removal of specimen trees defined in this article unless the director or directors he finds the tree stands. Okay, so it's still up to the director, I guess, to decide if it stands in the way.
Can it be a recommendation, Michael? Of this
Pardon me?
Can it be a recommendation as opposed to a condition?
Sure.
The director, consider this tree and its significance statewide.
Well, they have to get a tree removal permit and they have to comply with the requirements of obtaining that permit. And that's all we have.
Yep. Okay.
Unless you want to chain yourself to the tree, of course.
No, I don't want to do that.
Oh.
I'm too tired.
It's winter.
So where are we?
Good question. I can't quite tell if we are ready for a motion. Is there a member of the planning board who feels they are ready to make a motion?
If I may, before a motion's made, I just want to make a statement on the record that I do object to these prior legal advice that this board has jurisdiction to place conditions on a variance-free application. Again, pursuant to Pizzo versus Martin, we're only limited to the zoning ordinance itself and the ordinance as it relates to a minor subdivision. All outside ordinances and/or conditions are outside of the jurisdiction of this board. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question remains, is there a member of the planning board who is prepared to make a motion with respect to the application for the subdivision?
So, and just to be clear, anyone who makes a motion this would be for the subdivision, as Mr. Posada just explained, without any conditions or anything, but then there's still a process for both demolition and for tree removal that this applicant has to go through in order to carry out or not carry out any plans for this subdivided property. Is that correct? Do I sound like a lawyer now, Michael?
That is absolutely correct and beautifully stated.
Thank you.
One more question for you, Mr. Edelson. Because we have a demo ordinance and there's a process, we don't have to put that
No.
on as a condition because it's simply complying with the ordinances, correct?
Yeah, but yes. But we will indicate probably when I draft the resolution that those things need to be done.
Okay, thank you.
So you're looking for a motion. I will make a motion to pass this subdivision with the conditions Mr. Edelson will put on the resolution of approval, and with begrudgingly, but following the law.
Do we
Do
hear?
we have a second?
I'll begrudgingly second.
Ms. Lewis, please call roll.
Mayor Adams,
Yes, did you not hear me?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Don't make me say it louder. I wasn't happy about saying it in the first place.
Mr.
Could have
Daffis,
abstained.
I know.
She made the
Yeah.
motion. She can't abstain, can
Oh.
she?
Mr.
Well, she
Daffis,
has my permission anyway.
Yes.
Ms. Latham,
No.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Fryatt,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Steig,
Yes.
Ms. Ward,
We couldn't hear you, Ms. Ward.
Yes.
and Chair Pashota.
Begrudgingly, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda for this evening. If there are any members of the public who wish to address the planning board for any reason, you are welcome to do so now. Please use the raise your hand function and I will call on you. Seeing none, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded. All in favor, say aye.
And everybody wakes up.
All right, our next meeting is on Tuesday, December 9th. See you all then. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a
Good
good
night.
evening.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.